Okay, kids. Today we're going to go through the last 6 pages, but we're going to have a quick recap on where you should be, what you should have done this year, really, if we're honest about it. Should have done the research in your spec before the year began, the academic year, and this year you should have done. Well, you should have started off with your circuit designs. You should have probably about 3 or 4 of those, culminating in a final design, getting progressively harder, intros, summaries for each one of those. In the summary, the shortcomings of the circuit, how it can be improved, and then the next circuit, of course, builds on the previous, or maybe bring in something completely different, for example. Once we've done that, we've done the circuit designs, we move on to the breadboarding. We take one design and then we prove it works. We prove it works by prototyping it on a breadboard. Yes, getting the components and making sure that when they are all linked together, the circuit functions as required, as thought, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't function as it thought, then we have to make some amendments to it, because we have virtually modelled it in our circuit designs, and now we're physically modelling it, really modelling it in reality with breadboarding. So that's modelling, okay, very important. We then move on to PCB design. Once we have a breadboard that works, we then make a PCB design. So that's that, you have that blue and red design that we then produce the artwork from, okay? So we've got a PCB design. I would have thought there's various iterations. You build on that, and that's probably 2 or maybe 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages, culminating in a final PCB design, black and white design, with you identifying what each section of that mask, as we call it, that design does. For example, why do you have that transistor? Why have you got that buzzer? What are those group of outputs for? What are those inputs for? Why do you have those strain holes? You know, why do you include the information for? All those things should be identified and talked about. So we've done the PCB design, then we've got the making of the PCB, which we did about November time, I reckon it must have been. I think it was due in just before December. We've got the making of the PCB, and so there should be 2 pages of you going through the steps of etching your board. Once you've etched your board, populating your board, sanding it down, populating it, soldering it, testing it, debugging it on the computer, all those sorts of things, yeah? And that will be within the making of the PCB. We sort of stop there, and then we sort of take a sideways step, because we know how big the PCB is going to be now, so we know how big the cavity in the enclosure needs to be. And so what we're doing next is the concept sketches. Now the concept sketches, they're not as thorough as they may be for friends of yours who are doing RM, because we do designs in other areas. What we want to see is probably about 8 to 12 little thumbnail sketches. So different ideas really for the casing, for the enclosure, maybe a line or 2 explaining how that applies to your product. But no more than that, nothing in depth. Kieran, you all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Once we're in the concepts, we move on to initial designs, or you could say develop designs, really. These 2 can combine together depending upon where you want to be with your marks. If you want to get the top marks for design, you probably need to include all of them. However, you could probably miss one of these stages out. Probably miss initial designs out if you want to just drop a couple of marks, which I'm fine with, and you know where you're pitching yourself. Initial designs, probably about 6, which are a development from those concept designs. Maybe a little bit of mechanics shown. Maybe you're looking at how the circuit board is attached internally. Maybe you're looking at how those PCBs are located a bit more, okay? And I think I've shown you some examples which I've posted of that work, or that type of thing. And then we've got develop designs. Develop designs is a page of one design with all the bits and pieces which correspond to how it could be made. Now that is definitely like a side elevation showing the location of the PCB. You've probably got a front elevation in there as well. You've got an isometric drawing in there. I want to see how you can get the batteries out. I want to see how, you know, the top can be taken off if you want to change something or get to the food inside or whatever the thing is which applies to your product. I would have thought maybe a couple of those developed designs and then we've got a final design. The final design is exactly the same as what I've just said. Can you all picture this in your head? Yeah, final design is exactly the same. Big difference, then it's your final design. That is the design you're going to be following. That is the design that you're going to be making. All right? After that, let's do the CAD and the cutting list. That CAD may be of the product, the whole product. That CAD may be of a specific part of the product. Like, for example, the holder of the actuator, the holder of the motor. Absolutely fine. That CAD might be the front panel which holds your 7-segment displays. Absolutely fine. All right? So those various details of CAD or the whole CAD can be included there. And then we go on to the production diary. Production diary you should be in the midst of at the moment. That is the pictures which you have created or you've taken. They will be presented in a probably like a 4x2 grid, maybe like a 5x3 grid, depending upon your size of your page. And under each one of those pictures, it should explain what you're doing. Okay, so it could be that you're drawing the CAD because you need to cut out a support for your 7-segment displays. It may be you've got to cut out a front panel and using CAD. It may be that you're sanding something down so that you can paint it. It may be you're using some pins to pin together the casing. Okay, are you with me? All right, so that's where we should be at the moment. From here, what we're going to do, and I've not gone into at the moment, is the manufacturing specification. But we're going to do that once we come back, all right? Because I think you're going to be quite loaded up with work over the half-term break. So we go to the final 6. The final 6 pages of your project. I've put them on the board up here. I drew them out a couple of days ago. I'm going to jump around a little bit on this, but I'm going to start with page 1, final product. Now, what do you think is on that page? Picture. Robert.
Picture of your final product.
You're a genius, absolutely. Picture of your final product. What should it look like? Yes.
Kind of like the final design page? Like
yes, it should. It should, I suppose. In a lot of ways, you're right. But different in a way because it is your actual final product and it may have morphed a little bit, it may have changed. So I want it to look a little bit more like, do they get the Sunday Times or something? Yeah. Do you ever look at those funny little magazines you get and they've got Power Mop, absolutely fantastic at cleaning floors. Blue antibacterial head, extendable handle. You know the things I mean? Yeah, exactly the same. Product in the middle, I want you to tell me what's fantastic about that product. It does not have to relate to the specification, but I imagine it probably would relate to the specification in bits and pieces. So you may say acrylic front, self-finishing, high gloss, a front panel, which is easy to wipe, you know, maybe something like that. Corners, which have been sanded down so they're not sharp, and they're sharp to touch, or you know, so they're comfortable, so it's comfortable to hold. All right, you probably want to include some dimensions in there as well. All right, so that's your final product, a bit like an advert, and along the bottom, what we're going to put along the bottom? Come on, yes, Robert, again.
Looking at the thing, I'm guessing a YouTube link.
YouTube link, and the YouTube link, of course, is going to be my little clip that I've done of you. Once you finish the product, we're going to post that on YouTube. So if the examiner wants to actually see the product and you working the product to prove it works, he can go onto YouTube and he can have a look, which I think is fantastic. You know, absolutely brilliant. Right, final page. How long is it going to take you?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Do you reckon 30 minutes?
No.
How long do you reckon it's going to take?
An hour.
Well, I got 20 minutes from the group on Monday. You want to make it an hour? I'm fine with an hour.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You want to make it?
I'm not doing it.
Make it an hour.
1 hour, yeah? If you want to make it an hour, make it an hour.
It will take an hour.
It will take an hour.
Okay, let's go with some more realistic timings at 1 hour. Okay, next page. What's the next page I'm going to talk about?
Client feedback.
Incorrect. The next page is this page, number 4. Evaluation against specification. Yes.
It has like numbers, and there's a 1 and a 2 right next to the client feedback, and a 4 next to the evaluation against specification.
Wait, where?
they
see
rub
it.
it?
Doesn't matter.
Above the focus group.
Yeah.
What?
Above the thing above focus.
He's
group.
basically saying
Yes.
rename
Yeah.
them. He's saying rename them. Renumber them. Let them in order.
What?
No, so right now we think, because the pages are numbered in a different order to the order that you're telling us to do it in, so it's a bit confusing. That's what Rob was saying.
Right, so this is the first page, that's the second page, that's the third page. We're going to talk about the fourth page.
Oh, we're going to talk about the fourth page.
Yeah.
What's the fourth page?
This is the fourth page.
Oh, I thought it was the second page.
No, we're talking, what am I going to talk about next?
Oh.
I'm going to talk about page 4 next, right. And the page 4, what do you reckon it is, Charlie?
I reckon it might be the evaluation against specification.
Bingo, absolute gold. It's the evaluation against specification. Now, let's go back to your product. Let's go back to your product. Right. What are your spec points? Maybe my product has got to be lime green in colour. Yeah? Fair point. Not great. Fair point. Okay. Is this lime green in colour?
No.
No. Is this green in colour?
Yeah, close enough.
No.
It's yellow.
I would
green.
say that it's yellow
And it's
green.
two colours as well.
I
That
think
green.
fluorescent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not lime green though.
No. Do you think it's
Dark
that
green.
definitely green?
What there's
Yeah.
a sticky one.
You think it's dark green, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. What's my point here?
It's
doesn't
very
matter if it's
difficult to
subjective.
define green.
Subjective, not
Right,
objective.
it's subjective, not objective. We've got two different points here. We've got subjective points, subjective, which is open to debate, and we've got objective, which we can absolutely prove. All right, two different styles of point, and I imagine your specification is a mix of each. Okay, what I would suggest you do is start off your evaluation against specification by putting a title. I would then copy and paste your spec points in the second column and then number them in the first column. So that is identical to your specification page. Right, next up what I would do is I would go to this phantom column that I've got here. All right, this phantom column is a column where we work out, is this point objective or is it subjective? And that's exactly why we're putting an O or an S in there. What do you reckon the O stands for?
Objective.
Oh, this is it. Great. All right. So we've got objective or subjective, and that's quite important because what we've got to think is, how do we meet that point? How can we prove we've met that spec point? Well, if it is, that product should be green in colour, how can we prove we've met that?
Ask the
Subjective
client.
questions.
Right. So it's a questionnaire. It's a survey to who?
The client.
Focus group.
Client. Brilliant. Or
Focus group.
brilliant. How do you know this, Kieran? You're just brilliant.
Amazing.
So we go back to page 2. Okay. Now page 2 is a survey on the latter half of the page, or a client feedback on the first half of the page. The questions we're going to ask those people are the what questions?
Subjective.
The subjective questions. How do we know what the subjective questions are, Robert?
Because we've done the evaluation
Because
against
we put it up
specification
here.
page.
Okay. So we know the questions that we're going to ask the client, and we know the questions we're going to ask the focus group. The focus group should consist of what?
People that are in your target market.
People in target market, people that are in the user group. There's no point asking a baby if your product is focused on, I don't know, men between the ages of 20 to 40. Yeah?
It's
Yeah,
going.
that's facts.
Sorry?
That'll be the babies.
What do I want? I want pictures of the people in your target market, within your focus group, in your user group. I want you to include subjective questions, the subjective spec points. And there is one more question that I want you to ask. What do you reckon that's going to be?
How could it be improved?
Why do I want you to ask that, do you think?
Because
Let's hold that. Phil.
Second generation.
Let's hold it. Let's hold it. Right.
for the modifications
Right then.
page.
So we have our subjective questions, which allow us to justify what's been going on here. How do we meet it? Right. Next up. However, what happens if the product needed to be, for example, 200 millimeters high? How could we prove that point? Yeah.
Just put a ruler next to it.
Sorry?
Put a ruler next to it, you can take
Put a ruler next to it, and we can measure it, and therefore that question, or we're proving that by objective research.
Or tests.
So, what do you think we're doing on page 3?
Objective evidence or tests.
30
Brilliant.
minutes.
So, how do we know what objective tests we need to conduct?
Because it's a get on the evaluation
Because
against
it's on the
specification
evaluation
page.
up here. So we've got our objective or we've got our subjective.
We'll go to-
So quite easily what we can do is we can look at this and we can get the test, so we can measure it, we can weigh it, we can get a decibel meter and record it, whatever we need to do, make up the test on the objective evidence page. Are you clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you clear on 1, 2, 3 and 4?
Yes.
Evidence, the evidence is, you can see this on page, what would it be? It's 35 of my PowerPoint, where I measure the product using a ruler, where I recorded the decibels using my phone, using an app on my phone. Yes? Are you with me?
Yes.
Excellent. And in the final column, column 5, you put a tick or a cross. Who reckons they know what that is? Robert again, fourth time.
Did you meet it?
Did you meet it? Did you not meet it? So I imagine that's going to be another tick for you before we move on to slide 5. Right, slide 5 is one of the final slides. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be detailing the modifications that we believe we should have made. All right? How do we know what modifications we need to make?
Because of the question that we asked the clients on how it could have been
Excellent,
improved.
because of the questions. How could it be improved? Also, guys, if we have crosses here, what that means is, maybe it wasn't quite the right size, maybe it wasn't loud enough, maybe you couldn't see that display from a metre away. If that's the case, then here is the time to show how that could be improved and how you could meet that spec point if you were to make the product again. Thankfully, you're not going to be doing that. Right, so how do we do this? What we're going to do is we're going to get this picture over here and we're going to put it onto a PowerPoint slide. You could create a shape in front of it, literally a white shape, a white square. You can then click on it and you can decrease the opacity of it, which means you start to see through that shape. If you can see through that white square, you'll begin to see the image behind. So what you will be doing is fading your original picture out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes? Or fading it back in, I suppose, if we decrease the opacity of the shape in front. Makes sense?
Yeah.
But what we get is we get a faint picture of this. What we can do on that is we can draw over it. Now what we might want to do is make it bigger. We might want to put a handle on it. We might want to make the display bigger. We might want to put it on wheels. We might want to add something to it, a double display or whatever that thing is. Whatever's coming out of here and here and here and here, we can then implement on that page number 5. And of course, we're not just going to draw it on, we're then going to write about it as well. Yes, and that's why this is modifications. We can, if we want, just print this one out, this page out, just this image, and we can get a piece of tracing paper and we could just draw on the tracing paper, okay? And that'd be fine as well. You do it however you want. I'm happy. Understand?
Yeah.
Yes? What's quite nice about this is you've got a sense of scale. What was the image like before and how has it changed? Yeah? Good, good. And now we're going on to the final page, second generation. Now this page here is really looking at, if you're going to be making this, well, what would you have done? You're sort of saying what you would have done on the previous page in regards to design, but what about in regards to manufacture? So I would look at probably about five different ways that you could look at manufacturing parts of it. You probably wouldn't be 3D printing, would you? What would you be doing instead? What manufacturing technique?
Extrusion.
You could extrude, maybe?
Automation.
Pardon?
Automation.
Automation.
Injection
yeah.
molding.
Injection molding. You'd probably be injection molding. Yes, because it's so much faster. Yeah. You might not be using, for example, plywood. You might use MDF. You might be using CNC routing or CNC milling.
Is this on like a sort of industrial scale? How would you do it?
Industrial scale. If you were to make it commercially viable, what would you do? All right. So then you just detail all the things that you would do, and that is it, guys. That is the project done. So what I'm asking for you to do, timings, 1 hour.
Way more
well,
than-
making the page will take long, but carrying out the
So,
questionnaires and stuff.
Probably
like
I
90
mean,
minutes,
half an hour for the
2 hours.
focus group and an hour for the page.
What are we doing? 1 hour? 1 hour and a half?
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
hours.
yeah.
There's no chance we can swim.
Okay. Objective.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
30
30
minutes.
minutes.
What, 9, 10?
We've got
45.
evaluation.
45,
yeah.
45 we've got up there.
Definitely.
Mods.
Hour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
45.
45 minutes.
That works.
5
That
minutes,
works.
yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And generation, second gen.
30.
Fine.
No,
No,
no.
Well, that's the easiest
I mean,
page out of
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
just
but
like
like,
10 minutes
a lot
so
more.
easy.
So you've got about 3 hours work, maybe 4 hours work to finish off your project. And that is it, guys. So that is your NEA done. Yes.
There were some previous pages which, like, I didn't have, so I didn't have ethics and rules page.
Yeah, you will get no marks really for that. So
He spent so much time on it.
So,
I can't. It depends, right? If you had nothing in your, if you had no research and you put that in there, that would be good. If you've got a lot of research
Design.
already and then you're putting that on top, it's like, well, you've got full marks anyway. Do you see what I mean? So I don't think, if you haven't got it, I wouldn't worry about it. If you've got some spare time at the end and you think, yeah, I might do an ethics and moral page, it's absolutely
So is product analysis, design and research,
ethics knowledge.
ergonomics, are those research pages enough?
Exactly. No, not just those. I wouldn't have thought. But remember, when we've gone through it, we've gone through my map from the beginning. We've got client profile.
Oh
We
yeah.
haven't. I don't think we've done a site study.
We have.
Yeah,
You've
we
done.
did.
You've done a site study.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
altogether that's enough.
Yeah, you've got your ergonomics in there. You might have some size data in there.
We do.
Depends what's useful.
Combined
right.
analysis.
Does that make sense,
We.
guys? You can get on with that, or you can finish off the coursework.
Yeah.
Okay.
85.